has put solidarity ahead of his own personal safety.
Air raid sirens and no real guarantee of security.
As air raid sirens blared.
This was incredibly dramatic, Andrea. It was historic as well.
Historic, timely, and brave.
The first American president to go to a war zone with no U.S. military presence for security on the ground.
American presidents have made dramatic trips before. Nixon to China, Kennedy, Reagan to the Berlin Wall, and presidents have visited U.S. troops in war zones, but never like this.
To find a day of this kind of presidential bravery in a war zone, you've got to go all the way back to 1864.
With Biden's trip to Europe, he is welcomed as not only frankly the savior of Ukraine, but also the savior of Europe as a whole.
It's historic. It's the first time that a U.S. president has gone into an active war zone that the U.S. military does not have control over.
And against all odds, it was successful.
The continuing threat quite literally sounding all around the two leaders.
The skies here are not safe, and in fact, an air raid siren went off while President Biden was here.
Seeing the American president there, walking the streets of Kyiv while air raid sirens literally sounded in that moment about possible incoming fire from Russia.
The wail of an air raid siren.
Air raid sirens wailing in the background.
Seemingly undeterred by an air raid siren.
Undeterred by the sound of air sirens.
President Biden's ability with his aviators on to walk through in broad daylight in Kyiv.
The swagger of this trip, not just the execution of the...
Who won the Third World War? Would anyone would anyone be willing to accept that risk? The U.S. is never going to give up on the NATO member states. If it happens so that Ukraine, due to various opinions and weakening and depleting of assistance, loses, Russia is going to enter Baltic states, NATO member states, and then the U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight. Because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. I wish peace and Ukrainian support to the United States. TV4.
Okay, so today, as you all saw just an hour or so ago, President Obama announced that, President Biden. Whoa! That is news.
Unmute. Hello and welcome to News from the Pew, the only news program that doesn't gaslight Catholics during Lent and make sure that you can actually practice the faith. I am your humble host and man who freaks out about things constantly, Rick Barrett, and I'm joined by my team, my panel, my ever illustrious panel, much smarter than I am, guiding me through my ever present panic attacks. We first of all have Mr. Fawaz Yazi from the great state of Kentucky with his latest interview, his Get to Know series. Great interview with Bug Hall on Monday. Definitely go check it out. That was very informative, a lot of fun. Also, his 2 albums, go download them wherever streaming platforms you want. Stream them, listen to them. They're fantastic. And if you're on Twitter or social media, send him your top 5 favorite songs because he's looking to put those together as he thinks about going on a world hip hop tour. Next, we have Jonathan Arrington, our great scholarly friend, coming to us from Georgia now, correct? You left from, he's now in the great state of Georgia, so they're going to be more Catholic than you can believe down there as soon as possible. And as always, my shotgun rider, Mr. Stephen Cunningham from Sensus Fidelium and Spiritus TV, joining me as always. Gentlemen, it's been another week. I guess we'll just say that as the start. And I guess we'll just get to the big thing, which was the idea that Joey B goes to the Ukraine and, he gives them more money. But all that aside, we saw that in the preview, the air raids and all this other stuff, the pomp and the circumstance. But now I really want to address that clip. I really want to address that. And we'll go Fawaz, John, Steve, where Zelensky states, it's going to be a point. Of course, people are trying to walk it back. Oh, he only meant it in context. But the fact of the matter is that we've sent treasure now, essentially, joking or not, Fawaz, Zelensky is demanding blood.
Yes, of course he is. And good to be with you guys again. Always fun. Sorry I missed last week. And good to be with everybody who's watching. It reminds me of, I forgot what her name was. She was sitting, talking very calmly, mind you, about how in order for us to sustain the current world due to climate, whatever, we have to go back to the population of 500 years ago. And that's like, what, 70, 80% of the population right now? So they're saying that quiet, proud out loud, as we know. It's been one thing after another, with COVID, with jabs, also now with war. And they keep on pushing this narrative. My issue with his, I guess within context, even though he said it within context, my issue with what he said is he's pretty much saying, listen, we think that Ukraine's probably going to fall. Because if he could help himself, he would probably have soldiers from the United States fight this war for him. That's not one place we want to go because it's not a popular thing here in the U.S. It used to be the right, used to be gung-ho, war, and the left used to be no war, all peace. And now it seems like the rights are saying no war, we don't want to fight this war. There's nothing to do with the U.S. And the left are saying, by all means, do whatever you got to do to help Ukraine. So a lot of these things have absolutely flipped. So my issue
cannot hide away from human population growth because it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of population that there was 500 years ago.
You first, lady.
That's all. Yeah, that's always the case here, right? And everybody is suggesting their recommendation, but they're so arrogant. They also think, I can't go because you need me here to have all of these solutions when we get down to 500 years ago. And it's the same thing with Ukraine. Listen, this is between the border of Ukraine and Russia. I know the U.S. are thinking, if they take over Ukraine, they're going to go after Poland, but let Europe deal with that. This is a war in Europe. Let Eastern Europe, let Europe deal with their own issues. We have our own issues here that we need to take care of. I'm hoping for peace across the world. That should be the Catholics' approach here. It's peace. It's not war. So that's what I'm really praying for. I'm not surprised by what he said. He is calling for blood, but it's also because they're really accelerating this whole population control madness.
Yeah, exactly. And so, John, A, Zelensky's calling for blood. B, I will look up the article and get it to Steve while I throw this to you. You've had news media actually admit that any real attempt by Zelensky to push back they're not going to be able to successfully do it. It is a losing effort at this point. Despite that fact, Zelensky is still playing the part. He is a puppet, and he's still playing the part for the New World Order to continue to call for more treasure and more blood. And the fact of the matter is, we know from your commentary in the past that there is no good side here. But the fact, do you think he let the as the saying goes, do you think that was a slip up, that the quiet part was said out loud, or is it intentional to put that in the minds of the American public to just be ready for it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I was just flipping around kind of the general web reactions, and I read something from The Hill, because you want to see what the opposing side is thinking, or the propaganda they're trying to put out. And incredibly, they're suggesting that the only side that's interested in violence is the Russian side. And I don't know, it's confusing to me to see how different the narratives are, even sometimes out of the same people's mouths. So I don't know. The best thing I can think of is that there's a willful confusion they're trying to stir up in the minds of everyone about what's going on, and that maybe it's just all a big scheme to give each other money. I mean, not that they really have to make excuses with the way that I'm sure the folks actually pulling the strings are behind the printing of money, or the now not even so much the printing of money with the CBDCs coming out, but or becoming more and more prevalent. But so I don't know if it's more just an excuse, kind of a subterfuge to line each other's pockets, because that, if you're one step removed from the money, if you've received the money from somewhere else, then there's a little bit of money. It's just basically like a how should I say, an easier way of money laundering, right? Because, well, you didn't give the money to yourself; it was given by somebody else. Yeah, but if I gave them money,
John, we found the clip. We'll play it. I want you to react to it, and then we can all react to it. Let's take a look. This is from Andrea Mitchell.
Zelensky vowed on Sunday to take back Crimea. How realistic is that? The people there whom you spoke to view themselves as Russian.
That's right. From those people that we spoke to, it seemed unrealistic. And Andrew, I want to show you some new picture that we filmed yesterday at the port of Sevastopol. Now, this is the closest that any US news crew has got to the Russian Black Sea fleet in many, many years. What you're seeing here are President Putin's ships at that port. Why it's important is because Vladimir Putin will be determined to defend that port, to not have it taken away from him. He may well do pretty much anything to try to achieve that, and the reason why is because it is so strategically important to Russia. But here's the irony: the fact since he launched that invasion a year ago in Ukraine, the Ukrainians now will be determined not to have the Black Sea fleet there, potentially threatening their coast for years to come. So it is a very, very dangerous standoff that suggests that this could pan out for some time to come. It's hard to see how you reach a negotiation over that. And there in Sevastopol, Andrew, I've got to tell you, I mean, there was just military everywhere, absolutely everywhere. It is a military town. So again, when, for example, Victoria Nuland talks about, at the very least, we want Crimea to be demilitarized, I found myself standing there and wondering, how on earth does that happen?
And Keir, we keep hearing that Crimea is exactly what NATO and the U.S. fear Zelensky will try to go into with long-range weapons, maybe even with those F-16s if he ever were to get them, which I don't think he will, not in the near term. They're worried that that is a tripwire for Vladimir Putin. What is your take on that?
That's what they are worried about. I mean, that we're standing in the place that has Jake Sullivan, for example, really worried, Andrew. And the reason why is because the idea that NATO weapons might kind of land on this place, potentially kill Russian civilians, and that would be an escalation. But by the way, this is an enormous challenge, and General Mark Milley has made this clear. This is an enormous challenge for the Ukrainians. Here's why. Let's just give you a close-up look at that bridge behind me there. That's how we travelled into Crimea. It is open now. It is one of only two ways to get here. The other is a land bridge over to the northwest of here that is very, very much exposed. So with land forces, how do you take Crimea if you are the Ukrainians? That's why General Mark Milley says he thinks that it will be extremely difficult for the Ukrainians to push the Russians out of here. We have seen substantial defenses around this bridge behind me that is President Putin's pride and joy, Andrea, and that's not surprising. But as we saw in my piece, I mean, we also know that the Ukrainians have wanted, or at least they haven't admitted it, but it seems pretty likely that it was the Ukrainians, that they've wanted to target that bridge behind me there. Again, if you take down that bridge, how do the civilians leave? These are very, very difficult questions if we do get to the point where Crimea is an objective that the Ukrainians realistically can look at militarily.
John, you have the legacy media being like, okay, I think we need to stop now. So you have them saying that, like you're saying, two sides of the same, different sides. You got Zelensky saying, send more money, send blood, send your kids, send your soldiers. Then you got Andrea Mitchell, of all people, being like, probably not.
Yeah, I guess the most coherent thought that comes to my mind is similar to what I sent you guys today, as I was curious about why Vanguard was all of a sudden seemingly pulling out of ESG investments, even if it wasn't immediately visible to some folks, is that it seems to me this is probably somehow an involved scheme to make more money, as most wars have been, even for both sides, or to essentially to gain more power in some sense of the word, whether it's financial power or other sorts of power throughout history. So, I mean, I don't doubt that that's basically the driving motivation. There's kind of a libido dominandi, a desire to dominate and to lord it over certain people, even if it's in one side or the other, even both sides' worst interest long term to do it. That desire, because these are not the sort of people who can control their passions for the good. Sometimes they can control their passions to get what they want, but it's a perverted good. But they don't have that ultimate control over their passions kind of in line with what is actually and truly good and beautiful and true. Then I think that they're probably just being, almost drugged by that passion to dominate, to have power, even into this eventually kind of self-conflagration where we're all going to burn together, at least on the human scale is what it looks like. And so, yeah, they're probably talking out of both sides of their mouth because every once in a while, the truth is going to have to escape, because if you lie 100% of the time, no one takes you seriously. I mean, you are truly the village idiot that no one pays attention to. So I think they have to speak the truth occasionally, maybe even, more than just occasionally, about half the time, maybe. I don't know in this case precisely, but because otherwise people would just completely write you off. And so the sad part is I'm not sure which part they're lying about here, whether it's we truly want to fight, give us your blood and your guns and your money, or we truly want things to kind of calm down, de-escalate now because we know that it's mutually ensured destruction here. All we do know for sure is that in general, they lie a lot, the ones on the world stage that are talking about this war.
Steve, the killing will continue and the money laundering will continue until morale improves.
Yes. First off, Jane Goodell, who Fawaz brought up, yeah, she's a conservationist that
she's the monkey lady, isn't she?
Monkey lady has been living with monkeys for like 50 years or something like that. Sadly, the Vatican brought her in to talk. Was it 2 years ago now? I tried to I have the book that she was at with all the people that were there, except she was left out of it. For some reason, Matt, just with Gaspers, and I signed up for the info for it to come in. And they sent me, they still do, they'll send me an invite with all the booklets of the next meetings. But Jane is not in any of those books. There's no video of her ever speaking there. She spoke there. No one knows what it said unless you were actually there in the wherever they were at in the Vatican and videoed it, but there's no everyone else that you can find video of except her. Kind of fishy. Anyways, yeah, on the topic what y'all talking about here, I found a couple things while Jonathan was speaking. And first off, here is not just us talking about or threatening to boots on the ground. Here is for my English speaking people, Liz Truss of England. Speaking of
we need to do all we can to make sure Ukraine wins this war as soon as possible. Every extra day, lives lost, women violated, towns destroyed. We need to do all we can as fast as we can. My view is that does include fighter jets. And we've had...
So like we're sending planes, trains, and automobiles. Actually, we're just sending them tanks right now. But Liz is talking about them sending in planes. But listen what she says next.
A discussion today about which are the best possible options. Having spoken to the Ukrainians about this months and months ago, I know what they want is an option. They want, so let's work with our allies to get them an option to be able to use, because otherwise they won't be able to prevail.
She goes on to say, talk about their own will have to train, instead of training them, their own will have to fly the planes. So we'll have U.S. boots on the ground, and then they will have their people in the air. Here is CNN, I think it is.
Yeah, I don't really want to take
Mr. Zelensky goes about restoring his territorial integrity is a question for him to answer. It's an operation or operations that he must conduct. We're not getting involved in telling him how and when to do that. But we've never recognized Crimea as anything other than a part of Ukraine. But what they do going forward is going to be for them to decide. We want all of Ukraine's internationally recognized borders to be restored.
When Admiral Kirby makes statements like that, are they run past the CIA first?
No, I don't think so in a case like this. I rather suspect there were discussions in which there might have been a CIA person in the room, but this is essentially a political decision. What makes this particularly serious is, of course, if you push on this statement hard enough, it basically is very close to being a declaration of U.S. intervention in support of Ukraine against Russia, a military intervention.
And here's one more before I go to the key answer to all that is a former colonel here.
Right now, Judge, is essentially a logistics and command and control chain that goes into Poland. And that chain requires that you have individuals who are either in uniform but not wearing uniform, or contractors who have to go in and actually do the hard job of maintenance. These technologies, especially you're talking about anti-artillery systems with complex algorithms and computers, you're talking about Patriot systems, things like that. Those are all things which require a great deal of expertise and maintenance. And boy, howdy, when you get armor in there, you start getting all these other things, there's going to be a literal path that has to go from all the different battle locations in Ukraine over to Poland for those things to be recovered, because I don't think they're going to be able to recover them in Ukraine. They just don't have the technology to do it. So I think inevitably you're going to have the death of U.S. service members or contractors in a very short order if the war continues at its current pace.
How dangerous is it to have American troops out of uniform? They don't have the protections of the Geneva Convention. They can be shot. They can be arrested as spies. They can be summarily executed. Now, Putin's not crazy enough to do that. The last thing he wants is American troops on the ground in uniform shooting at his troops. But the exposure of American troops that way, for what? Just so the president can say, we don't have troops on the ground. Yeah, they're there, but they don't have uniforms on, so I don't have to admit they're there. That's absurd.
Plausible deniability. And yeah, I got to admit, I mean, look, most of my career doing this sort of thing, I was a uniform member, like Afghanistan. I never wore a uniform once, and I was there as a major. So these things do happen. And I understand that there's times necessary. But yeah, there's a fig leaf of deniability right now, Judge, with Biden. They're trying to say, oh, yeah, no, we're just giving it to him. We're not. There's no way that you can sustain this technology without having actual qualified people do it. If you're going to be effective in providing technology to an ally, you have to provide adequate supply chains and technicians to run it.
And I'm sure everybody knew about, wrong button, we talk about the air raids.
I've been here for the past 5 days. I have not heard any explosions. I have not heard any air sirens until about half an hour ago, right when President Biden was in the center of Kyiv, as Clarissa was just mentioning.
So it was a dog and pony show. It's just the whole world's a stage. You're just paying the electric bill
deliver much needed humanitarian assistance as well as food, water, medicine, shelter, and other aid to Ukrainians displaced by Russia's war, and provide aid for those seeking refuge in other countries from Ukraine. It's also going to help schools and hospitals open. It's going to allow pensions and social support to be paid to the Ukrainian people so they have something in their pocket. It's also going to
translation, your tax money is going to your new 51st state. Israel got kicked out of being 51st. They're now the 52nd, but Ukraine is the 51st state now.
Steve, can you roll up the Joe Biden clip about fentanyl since you just talked about he said, oh, we want to make sure they have money in their pocket and this, that. So that's the 51st state. How is Joe looking at the problem where 80,000 or 71,000 people died last year of fentanyl overdoses? And
she was very specific recently, saying that a poor mother who lost 2 kids to fentanyl, that I killed her sons. Well, the interesting thing is that fentanyl they took came during the last administration.
Dude, what are you laughing at? A, and B, how do you track that? Oh, well, this pill came from this guy. It's like, what? How is that even a thing? And that's just how they look at you, man. But if that fentanyl was in the Ukraine, they would carpet bomb the hell out of the cartel until they went away.
And it goes back to the flawed two-party idea that it's a uniparty, but everyone goes, it's my team versus your team. We have a clip of the Ohio people literally at least being more rational than you see about the people on the talking heads on TV, because you got people blaming Trump. He signed a thing back then 4 years ago. As one guy brings up, the current regime has 2 years. They own both houses, and they still didn't do anything. But yet they'll go back and blame Trump. And Trump would blame Obama. And Obama would blame his predecessor, and so on and so on. It's always blaming the other guy. They do the same thing. They check off and re-sign all the emergency orders. The Ronan emergency order got re-signed. 9/11 one will be re-signed all the time. From now to the end, to your death, it will be re-signed every year. Vote harder, as they say. Thanks be to God for you people in the United States. There are people literally talking, I never thought it would happen, from the Congress about national divorce. That's the only, you want peace, you want the U.S. out of the NATO and out of all these other places, get out of D.C. That's the only option. You think voting harder is going to change anything? It's not going to end the U.S. It's not going to end the Ukraine war. It's not going to end all the wars that we're in. I mean, how many wars are we in right now? We're surrounding China right now with bases. They're drooling for a war with China. There's Nigeria's in an uprising. We got sanctions on Syria and Turkey because, I mean, right now, the earthquake that happened in Turkey, Syria, we're not helping humanitarian aid in Syria because of the sanctions we got. Oh, we're the greatest people in the history of the world. But because we don't like Assad and lied about him, about the gassing people on, we're letting those people die where we could help. It's like, we're giving aid to Ukraine for what is it, $111 billion we've given to the Ukraine, corrupt Ukraine government right now, and not almost nothing for those people out in Syria. I think they gave like 180 days lift from the sanctions to help people in Syria, and not everything that we usually would give, but because they hate Assad, and that's in that whole thing that I forget the colonel that did that sit down with these 7 nations that they were going after. I mean, Ukraine isn't on because Ukraine is our puppet for right now. That is the key for this whole thing right now. For some reason, they picked Ukraine, but it's because they put Zelensky in there. And if Zelensky gets knocked out, they put somebody else in there. And again, let's say if Biden's out, there's going to be someone else in Biden's place. So you think somebody's in control? They're not. And if you think they're going to vote for something in Congress, they're not. They're going to do anything with the Constitution? They're not. Everything's going to go through NATO, the new one world government. And because you didn't elect them, you didn't vote for them, you didn't anything, it's going to be run through through NATO or the United Nations, one of the two. It's going to be nothing that you wave your flag and pledge allegiance to whatever, which I never will. That doesn't matter. NATO is going to be in charge. So the whole idea, one world religion with the Abrahamic thing, and you got the one world government with NATO. And hey, guess what? They just came out on TV saying all those conspiracy theorists was right. Ukraine and NATO, the whole bringing together and getting them involved and all that, they've accepted that idea. It's literally on TV, right out in the open for everyone to know, which was one of those things which they said which Russia said not to let happen, and they would just poke the bear, keep poking it, and eventually people who end up having blood on their hands. You're muted.
Out what I'm saying while I'm unmuting myself. But here's the next story. I sent it to you in the private chat because we're just winging it today, folks. He mentioned pledging your flag and signing over these things. Well, the Bidens, as I like to call them, are in negotiations with the World Health Organization for a pandemic treaty that would sign over U.S. sovereignty in name of health and safety. I'll look for the what's the guy's name? Tartar, or whatever. Tartar, Jar Jar Binks. He had a statement about this. But Tedros, yeah. Tedros had a statement talking about how this is going to be the next evolving. They want to put the parameters in place to protect us from the next pandemic flaws. Because, of course, all we need to make sure is that we're ready for the next pandemic, as Steve was talking about, because it's never going to end. People thought it was going to end before, but that's definitely not the case, Fawaz.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, bud. And looking back, I remember, what's her name? Saint Mary, is it Alaquay? The Christ the King, was it? Or it was that's how we got the French Revolution. The king would
Saint
not.
Mary Margaret Alacoque.
Yeah, 100 years to the day when our Lord said, "You need to do this," she didn't. And I know a certain exorcist priest that we know just gave a talk just recently, and he said that the mess that we're in right now, Russia spreading her errors across the world, is all due to the fact that a pope, or any of the popes since then, would not spend 15 minutes doing a single prayer, which is the consecration in the correct way. But so I guess our Lord did appear to Sister Lucia, and he did say that when it will be done, you could take Francis's, for example, if you want to, a consecration, that it'll already be too late, unfortunately, because Russia had already spread her errors across the world. And the dates that you're seeing a lot of these things coming about since 2020, the 2029, the 2030 agenda, 2032, those are around the same date, 100 years later, when Our Lady gave her apparitions in Fatima, maybe I think the last one, and then also our Lord appearing to Sister Lucia. So you're seeing history repeat itself in a certain way, and unfortunately, it all you see from the Old Testament, you see up until throughout history and up until now. The issues that we have in this world are literally based upon the fact that men just don't take God seriously. We don't, in our personal lives, we don't take him seriously in our communities, in our parishes. We don't take him seriously in the world stage. He's literally like handing us peace, and we keep dropping the ball. It goes to show you the state of man. So we're talking about future pandemics and what come what may. What I'm looking at here is, obviously we all know some of these events, some of these saints, and some of the visionaries have told us. I remember, what's her name? Marie Julie Jahenny, one of my favorite mystics, talking about a stigmatist for 50 years, longer than Pio, a beautiful soul. She talked about in the near future how all these diseases will come about. She did give us a few. She gave us a few remedies for the upcoming pandemics. So you either are going to take God seriously, what he says, and Our Lady, they have an unblemished track record, of course, of their predictions. You're going to take some of these visionaries who are very holy that Christ appeared to, or we're just going to continue, talking about these things on a day-to-day basis. I mean, obviously, all of these things have to come to pass. As a Catholic, the greatest thing for you to do is to stay in the state of grace and kind of just buckle up and just wait for all these things to happen and hope that you make it through. And if you don't, at least you're in a state of grace. So my thing with, and obviously we have to have a one world order. We have to have a universal religion, because you cannot have the Antichrist and Christ coexisting in the world. One has to take over the other. We all know that at the end, Christ will triumph. But right now, we're going through it. So with all these dates that are coming up, it's not surprising that at the end of the decade, we're going to see things accelerate even faster. And we're going to see things that are, the chastisement, obviously, it's already here. People say, is the chastisement coming? We're already in it. It's just going to get worse before it gets better. So the U.S. have to relinquish its power to the WHO. The whole world has to give its power to the UN, to the Abrahamic Accord, or whatever you want to call it. These things really have to come about. Either you have faith that these things are going to happen, or are you going to trust in our Lord, or are you just going to play coincidence theorist and trying to figure these little pieces out one by one? It's not going to work. You just have to.
Oh, Patrick.
Come on, Patrick. So yeah, that's all I got to say. That's it. That's all I got to say.
I just real quick, listen to this, John. So under that pandemic treaty, Joey B said the United States will be obligated to hand over a whopping 20% of its medical supplies, including diagnostic testing, antiviral medication, and vaccines for the WHO for global distribution. So not only are we now the global distributor in war, now we'll be the global distributor in the cure, I guess, right? They cause the problem and the solution. So the circle of corporate life is complete. What do you think, John?
Yeah, and perfect what Fawaz said, and that coincidence theorist, that's brilliant. That's a great description of what they're expecting right now. What it makes me think of is the way, all good philosophers, but especially St. Thomas says you have these sorts of analogies we use in just everyday physical reality that everyone comes in contact with to describe even deeper things. You could say things more detached from the physical, so spiritual realities. And something that Fawaz just said, and then you reiterated, Rick, made me think of it. Effectively, what we have is they are trying to keep us sick, both spiritually sick, but also, in regard to our physical health, so that they can offer these solutions for some of the symptoms, or potentially, let's just say that, potentially solutions for some of the symptoms, but never actually going after a root cause. And people have talked about this in regard to the COVID craziness for a long time. Instead of encouraging people to get outside and get some sunshine, become healthier by exercising more, by eating properly, you name it, maybe getting away from the big cities where these outbreaks began, and then also probably where they spread mostly. Instead of doing anything like that, no, they're going to keep us sick so that they can offer these, assuming the best, partial solutions. And we can see it, I think, in the physical world best after the COVID craziness, but I've been thinking about it more lately, just reading Father Ripperger's work on kind of his treating psychology, more or less. Originally 3 volumes, now he's got it in that one big volume. And it just made me think of the way that effectively this is what happened back in the earlier part of the 20th century in the so-called study of psychology, which was really the early modern approach to it was just throwing off all the quote unquote baggage of the Middle Ages and a true study of the human soul, and instead trying to encourage vice, or especially curiosity about things having to do with the 6th and 9th commandment, and then get on to people for basically looking into what sort of crazy purid things they were talking about early on. So again, it's keeping us sick so that they can then offer at least a bunch of alternatives for ways in which we might get better, but never wanting us to actually find a way to truly get better, both physically in regard to better health. It should be clear to anybody who's got half a brain about how to stay healthy. And then I just say kind of there's a spiritual comparison to be made here with the way in which they'd like to keep us spiritually sick as well, both in our attachment to our own physical health. All right. Oh my gosh, am I going to die? Am I going to die? Am I going to die? How about, am I going to have lived well? Will I have lived well? Because we're all going to die. In fact, you know what? Sorry. I'll end here. But Tucker Carlson said something good about this a few days ago. He was talking about how this whole mess has shown how, and especially with people like Biden and Fetterman in office, it's really because they're so physically unwell, and then to see them win such important offices, I mean, a senator, and then even a president like that. These are people who are unwilling to face death, which probably is coming more quickly for Biden and for Fetterman than for most of us, and instead want to stick them on the world stage. It's almost as if they're admitting they're terrified of the thought of death, and so anything to stave off, embracing at least old age, or in Fetterman's case, serious health issues. I mean, I'm an epileptic. There are days when I can't move. I don't know why. It's hard to know. We just deal with it. My family. What else are you going to do? And then, but with Fetterman, he's got some health issues now. Hey, embrace it. You don't have to be Catholic to just say there's a way of embracing it. You don't even initially, I think, have to look at it through the Catholic eyes of, hey, embrace your cross. Eventually, you're going to have to get there. But just some way of saying this is the course of nature. I'm not going to get out of it. AI is not going to save me. I think Tucker was on it about that. But it's another thing to just keep our minds away from the memento mori that the Catholic Church has tried to tell us about really for 2,000 consecutive years. I mean, really, that's in essence what the Catholic Church is having us do. Face the fact you're going to die. Are you going to be able to say when you die, I've lived well? And of course, for us, that means the way God wanted us to live. But they want to keep our minds completely away from that.
Yeah, especially during this penitential season, Steve, where the whole point of Lent is to detach yourself from this world in the form of giving things up, Anthony, and making sure that you can you can prepare yourself for the four final things, and preparing yourself for these kinds of things, Steve. And it's definitely the eclipsing of modernity over our true purpose in being here.
Yeah. So, I mean, back to the article you brought up, they've been trying to do that for a few months now. And I don't know if y'all been paying attention. They see out in the UK, they're doing the bird flu thing. They even flu thing that's going out there. Bless me. Thank you. Gesundheit. And they're already talking about another lockdowns from that. And one person, I think, died in the Eastern Hemisphere. And guess who's in charge of the lockdown write-up? Neil Ferguson, that jolly old guy that shut down everyone in Europe and told everyone that what Trump said repeated. Trump repeated his number, right?
This is also the guy that broke the lockdown to go hang out with his wife's his concubine. Let's say it that way.
Yeah. No, rules for me, not for thee, or rules for thee, not for me. But I mean, just like everything else, you have everyone's playing God, except kind of what Jonathan was talking about with them afraid of death. So you got an article. Let me see if I have that article right here of deflecting the sun's rays. I don't know if you've seen that. So they're literally talking about this again, try to cool the world down. Okay, they've been talking about. They do this with chemtrails right now. So they got stuff in the skies that they're doing all the time. You got they're changing the food so that, again, with this whole East Palestine thing, I'm not totally sold on everything that they're talking about, because you look at the 10 days that they didn't have any coverage of what was going on there. Why did they burn anything? A friend of mine had we were talking about saying, if you do that, you're trying to hide something, because everyone's using dioxin right now. That's the bad thing, which it is. Trust me, I know there's a lot of stuff on. You go to Clown Planet yesterday. I have about 40 minutes on this stuff, and I mean the lifespan of it on the regular ground without anything on is 1 to 2 years. In the water, it's 100 years. So and everyone's talking about the food supply, and the chickens can get it, the eggs mainly. It's worse than fatty tissue, so breast cancer. Women is very high susceptibility to this. So you're looking at infertility, and that could be eyebrow raising. But is this a land grab? Are they going after the food supply? And you got all this stuff. They got bugs, bug milkshakes coming out. There's the chocolate that are coming out where they're putting insects in. There was somewhere out in shoot, I forget the name of the country, but they're putting in an ice cream just to give the kids, say, hey, you like this, don't you? Yeah. So they're being very coy about trying to insert it in your. IKEA is doing it with their meatballs, or Sweden's doing it with their meatballs, and IKEA is selling it. So it's like, whatever.
That's what happens when you let the Swedish chef cook for you.
Yeah. So they're getting there, and they're saying this is better for you. You don't need this. The food supply is going to kill you. You had to do our new creation. So they're creating new food. They're creating new, air. We can fix the air. We can fix this. We can do it ourselves. They're playing God in a sense. Given the whole Abrahamic thing, it's stop me if I'm wrong, because the other two are way better at scripture than I. Doesn't it seem like a modern Tower of Babel in the sense we can do this our own self. We can create our own food. We can create our own atmosphere. We can create our own, we can avoid the germs out there, things like this, which it's not germs. Think about these people in Ohio getting the same sickness that you saw for the last 2 years too, by the way. That's kind of, that's what they're telling you what's going on is the same thing what you've been for the last 2 years is the same thing that these guys are feeling right now. What they're saying they're feeling. It's just, I don't know, it's one of those things. You talk about the Antichrist and all this. I'm not saying that that's happening right now, but it just got this feeling that we're poking as for why I talked about the 100 years thing for leading up to 2029. We're going like that to him, and we're doing it our own way, and we're forget what what's been working for the last 100 years, that millennia. Garanger writes about that for tomorrow's write-up, talking about how when a nation or country rejects its Catholic roots, when the not the free thinkers, but just the modernists want to say that it's superstitious. Hey, we can do it better this way. It takes about 100 years or so to see that nation country just collapse. The morality just go away. And you're seeing that with just Virgin Airlines the other day had an all LGBT crew to fly, and they were parading that. Hey, yay! Who can you fly the plane? Why do we have to care about what these guys do? I mean, do you want to be a 3 mile? How many miles off of the sky, off the air, off the ground, and your whole crew is a bunch of sodomites? I mean, I don't think that's what you want.
It's like the opposite of Noah's Ark.
Yeah, I mean, you got even the with the New Zealand the hockey. They had a tranny doing the hockey the other day. It's all over. It's a global phenomenon. It happened real quick. So it's one of those things. So I know we keep poking the bear. I don't think good things are coming out of this. I mean, I don't know. It's just like the whole train thing goes back. I can play the four people there. But as one expert says, those train things, those containers don't break like a coffee cup. They practice dropping. They practice the smashing them together and leak tests and things like. They just don't break that easily. And now we got this thing that just broke over a brake failure when these things have crashed through other things and you don't see these leaks. And how many train crashes we had just the last couple of weeks, and it's just interesting what's all going on that you're not hearing on regular media.
Nope, you won't hear it because they don't want you to, and it's definitely. We've talked about in the past how it's designed to distract you. I just sent you another thing. It's by the way, gentlemen, welcome to Women's History Month. So half the population won't know what they are, and Hershey's has decided to celebrate that with literally taking Hershey and making it into that. And we'll see that when Steve drops that in a second. But we're
My name is Faye Johnstone. I'm the executive director of Wisdom to Action. We can create a world where everyone is able to live in public space as their honest and authentic selves. See the women changing how we see the future at Hershey's Canada.
That's a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude who thinks it's a woman. So I hope you don't like Hershey. I know Brick's in the chat. He has a top 10 list for everything. I hope Hershey's isn't in your top 10 list for candy, because if it is, it's got to get removed in that regard. But that's definitely something that should be looked at. Now you mentioned. Now I'm going to get us back on topic. You just mentioned the trains and the train crash. Looks like our overlords on TV still want to talk about that. So let's go to Joy, good old Joy from The View, and how she thinks about the people in Ohio, which voted for Trump twice, and how they, how providential it should be that it would happen to them.
Regulations for a second, because it seems to me that the Republicans are obsessed with this notion of the free market, and they don't like a lot of regulations.
Because it means profit. When you deregulate, you get profit.
But I know.
Part of deregulation,
for example, there were very few plane crashes. Thank God. And that's because the industry is highly regulated. We have to pay for regulations and safety standards. Otherwise, where are we? We're all going to go up in flames.
Norfolk Southern gives as much to Democrats as Republicans. It's a very powerful lobby that is trying to block regulation. And this train, to Sarah's point, 2 miles long with 2 full-time employees and a trainee on it.
And they didn't even need to, because the last administration rolled it down to only one worker. They happened to have 2.
One thing I just want to say is I do think this was an unforced error by President Biden. It was 20 days before we had Secretary Buttigieg go down, 10 days before he put out a statement acknowledging it. This is Trump country. He won by 40 points. He is a president for all Americans. I believe that, but he needs to show that he is. It was time for him to be.
I don't know why they would ever vote for him, for somebody who, by the way, he placed someone with deep ties to the chemical industry in charge of the EPA's Chemical Safety Office. That's who you voted for in that district. Donald Trump, who reduces all safety. He did in those days.
Showed up at McDonald's and those voters saw something on the ground that probably resonates in a way that they need.
But they need to look past the photo ops, these people, and say, who's doing the job here? Forget about the photo op.
Showing up is a big
Showing up, I think
this is Donald Trump's fault.
Point. For the neoliberals who say that the residents of that area deserve what they are getting because they voted for President Donald J. Trump, it is abhorrent. This is about poverty. This is about poor, working class, white people who are enduring some of the same things that poor, working class black people endure, whether it's Flint, Cleveland, or Jackson, Mississippi. And so I want to lay it out. The cultist behavior in politics right now, it is a sin and a shame that when people are suffering to this magnitude, you got people who will fix their mouths, to quote my grandmother, to say that they are getting what they deserve. What they deserve is clean air, clean food, clean water. They deserve relief, both in the short term and also in the long term.
A left side or a right side or this and back and forth. We're not tired of that. It's not about, it's about our town now and people not being able to drink the water, about kids having rations. It's about this thing. That's what this is about.
Norfolk Southern. What do they really owe this community?
They owe this community a lot. They owe us property value. They owe us our health. They owe us 5-10 years from now when things are going on.
This company that's owned by J.P. Morgan, Vanguard, and BlackRock. Let's not. Alan Shaw's a pawn. He's a pawn. He makes $8 million a year. $8 million a year. He lives in an 8,000-foot square mansion. He doesn't care about the people.
They're going to make their money, man. The trains are going to roll no matter what. Whether we're here or not, we're just ants to them. Industrial accidents can be prevented. Every industrial accident that's ever happened in the country can be prevented. Preventative maintenance.
Trump in 2018, there was, I get the policies. The policies weren't great. That's fine. And you know what? If Trump has to take a little bit of the blame, I'm good with that. But you know what? This administration has had the House, the Senate, the presidency for the last 2 years. They changed a lot of policies. Day one.
They imposed a contract and stopped the rail workers from striking. I mean, tell me a little bit. Do you feel like the rail workers should have struck?
Absolutely, they should have, because of what has happened.
If Donald Trump was in power right now, what kind of things would you expect him to do to make a situation like this right?
Well, it's not about what I would expect Donald Trump to do. It's about what I would expect the leader of our country to do. And if Donald Trump was here to do something, if he was the president, I would expect him to do the same thing that Biden would do, and that would be to come in here and fix up what needs to be fixed up.
We're not wealthy, we're not the top 1%, but we just want what's
We're not
done
after
right.
for money,
What's
we're after
done
for
right.
fixing so we can stay where we've lived forever.
Well, you're going to stay there. Nobody's going to take you anywhere else, to be honest. But Flaws, it's amazing that to Joy Behar and your coastal elites, the squares, the flyover country, are a bunch of inbred, not very well speaking like me, hicks. But yet when you actually sit down, and this is what people say all the time, just sit down and talk to your neighbor, go out and talk to your neighbor. You'll find that most people, while they may not be quote unquote learned, they have a pretty solid grasp on the things that happen, at least in their town.
Yeah, that's usually the case. learned nowadays means indoctrinated. So the further you can stay away from universities, the better you're going to be, honestly. When you have, 1 out of 13 teachers in universities is actually a conservative, that's a disparity there. So, but I only got one thing to say. I'm going to pass it on to the other guys with this. Unfortunately, with Joy, she doesn't have much of a logical brain. Let's take her logic just for a quick second and turn it back on her policies or what she likes. If by your logic, Joy, here's what you really are saying. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer have been in politics for 30 or 40 years. So when you cry systemic racism, when you cry unfairness in the legal system, when you cry unfairness in education and student loan debt, should we then say, voters, that's what you got the last 40 years, what they were in office, putting these policies that brought America down? Why is it the last 4 years that we can blame, but not the last 40? That's all I got to say.
Said. John, your thoughts on Joy, the retort for Joy, and then the people of Palestine, Ohio?
Well, yeah, that was an interesting clip there with Joy Behar. I mean, I feel like in a certain way, and maybe I'm just judging it based on the clips of her saying such crazy things, and maybe she has moments where she's more guarded normally. I mean, total, I've only seen the added up clips that may amount to maybe 10 minutes total of what she said. But it seems like her lack of a filter is actually kind of helpful. It shows you what a lot of people are probably thinking, but most people are just not brave enough to say it out loud, or stupid enough, I guess I should say. Brave would be if you were virtuous and actually were saying something true and worthwhile to be profitable to people. But so yeah, there's something almost quirkily that's admirable about seeing what people like that are truly thinking, and then finally it comes out. I mean, yeah. So the thing that I would say is that it's good for us to process that and see that is what happens when you become truly vicious. That is, you are so attached to the vice of wishing ill, in her case, wishing ill on people who don't agree with you, that you would like to see them suffer something like this, because that's effectively what she's saying. That's truly vicious, and vicious again in the scholastic sense of when you keep allowing yourself to indulge in vice, when you don't try to use self-denial to eventually break free of habitual vice and get attached to virtue instead. This is the way people at least are thinking, because vice is primarily in the will, so it may not always come out in someone's words on a screen like it does for old Joy there, but that is the logical consequence. So be forewarned, this can happen to all of our souls in various ways. It's just we may not be stupid enough to blurt it out loud.
Very good point there, Steve. Your thought on that? You believe that segment was brought to you by Bush down there in Palestine, Ohio, which, by the way, nothing wrong with a cold Bush, especially if you're on a budget. So I don't think you should be a classist, Steve. That's my phrase there.
Hey, PBR is the champagne of the South. I mean, I remember being in a hotel when I was training with AT&T to sell the Yellow Pages, which is the toughest job I ever had. And they had a special with PBR, and the guy asked, "Would you like that in a nice mug?" I said, "No, I would like this in that tall, beautiful can, probably poisonous can, the way it should be."
Hey, PBR was the official sponsor of my rugby team because it was the cheapest half keg you could get.
Yes. Now, Joy is just like the typical all the other ones. One, I mean, they're doing it for ratings, obviously. She's the interrupter in chief. She's triggered beyond trigger anytime someone brings up Trump. Everything's Trump's fault because it has to be, because that's Joy's mindset. I mean, the rain comes down, Trump, blame Trump. You see a kitty, you got to punch Trump. Yeah. And it's like the guys, that was the rational guys, those 4 guys there. They actually said, his policies weren't that great for what they did. Okay, let's move on. We can't change the past on that. What are we going to do now? And if it doesn't matter whose side it is, what's going to be the solution to the problem? They're not putting the blame in this guy's terrible, and they're wearing Trump hats. One thing I heard today was, if it was really bad, the atmosphere there, why would Trump go for photo ops in Ground Zero? So it just goes back to they're politicizing this beyond politicization. What is going to happen there in the next, over time, years, things like that? That's, there was a city that they had this problem back in the 50s. I forget the name of it. And they basically dumped all this stuff in it, lit it up on fire, and put a big sign, "Do not enter."
I think you're talking about Love Canal in New York.
Yes.
I believe so.
Yes. So will that happen here? Don't know. They've already had, I have this on Climate Planet yesterday. They've sent contaminant barrels to places in Michigan and other parts of Ohio and even Texas. So I don't know if it's in your backyard, Rick, or not, but they sent it down to Texas. It stopped, I think, yesterday, but they've already sent these around to different places in the union. So no idea why. Again, it goes back to the test. Everyone's worried about the dioxins, but no one's testing it. It costs $1,000 per sample to test this stuff. So they're not going to do it. You can't do it individually. If they're not going to look for it themselves, if the state's not going to do it, because they have Shapiro from Pennsylvania. He's asked about it. He doesn't even know if they're testing for it. And Shapiro, he was that great guy that went after the Catholic Church a few years back, hater of us. So yeah, and to do that, they'd have to do it every 100 feet. And so imagine every 100 feet in different areas to test for this material, and it's not going to happen. So it just, down here in North Kakalaki on the coast, there's some water. The water is so bad, it's poison is so bad there that they're offering the people complimentary filters or home changing units, to the point that it's going to poison their food supply. Again, you're not hearing this on national medias, but they're worried about their food, the milk, their cows, their chickens to die because they can't get good water to their animals, but you can get it for their in-home. So guess who's going to be there to fake foods and things like that. So it's not just isolated, and everyone's going to look here again. What's the right hook going to be? Or for me, it's the left hook. What is that going to be? Everyone's focused on these little things, but check out, see what's going on in all these other areas. There's a ton of poisonous water out there that has happened in the last couple of weeks. And it's just, again, it's not being focused on. We're thinking about Trump, Biden. This is literally the beginning of the 2024 campaign in Ohio, and it's going to be talked about for the next couple of years. Watch it. Drink every time you drink a Bush. Every time you hear that for the next year and a half, you may need a liver transplant. Oh, this is also affecting livers.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I don't know what else to add to that, guys. That's pretty impressive. Steve, do we have any other things that oh yes, we did. One more thing, folks. There's no transition. We can't, but there was a Senate hearing with Merrick Garland and the Justice Department. And one very explosive thing, at least for Catholics, came out. Just take a listen.
Pattern, though. The FBI field office in Richmond on the 23rd of January of this year issued a memorandum in which they advocated for, and I quote, the exploration of new avenues for tripwire and source development against traditionalist Catholics, it's their language, including those who favor the Latin Mass. Attorney General, are you cultivating sources and spies in Latin Mass parishes and other Catholic parishes around the country?
No, the Justice Department does not do that. It does not do investigations based on religion. I saw the document you have.
What did you do about
it? It's appalling. I'm in complete agreement with you. I understand that the FBI has withdrawn it and is now looking into how this could ever have happened.
How did it happen?
That's what they're looking into. But I'm totally in agreement with you. That document is appalling.
I'll tell you how it happened. This memorandum, which is supposed to be intelligent, cites extensively the Southern Poverty Law Center, which goes on to identify all of these different Catholics as being part of hate groups. Is this how the FBI, under your direction and leadership, is this how they do their intelligence work? They look at left-wing advocacy groups to target Catholics? Is this what's going on? I mean, clearly it is. How is this happening?
The FBI is not targeting Catholics, and as I've said, this is an inappropriate memorandum, and it doesn't reflect the methods that the FBI is supposed to be using, should not be relying on any single organization without doing its own work.
Let me just ask you, as my time expires here, a very direct question. How many informants do you have in Catholic churches across America?
I don't know, and I don't believe we have any informants aimed at Catholic churches. We have a rule against investigations based on First Amendment activity, and Catholic churches are obviously First Amendment activity.
Well,
but I don't know a specific answer to your question.
You don't know the specifics of anything, it seems, but apparently on your watch, this Justice Department is targeting Catholics, targeting people of faith, specifically for their faith views. And Mr. Attorney General, I'll just say to you, it's a disgrace.
So obviously, Fawaz, this is all Dr.
dare
Taylor
you.
Marshall's fault for being on the YouTubes and talking about that Latin Mass, man. That Latin Mass, it's a hotbed for terrorism and so forth.
Oh yeah. Dr. Marshall is the Catholic Trump. Everything is his fault. I don't have much to say about this. Just a couple things. Number one, oh no, poor traditional Catholics, poor us. We have the globalist agents for the Antichrist. They hate us. We must be on the wrong side of history. We should rejoice. This should be good. When you're attacked by those who hate you, by those who want to, they hate your children, they want to sexualize them, indoctrinate them, and they want to come after. This means that we are in the desert. This is our temptation. It's fine, but this is what they want to do. Whatever. My thing is, with these Senate hearings, I don't pay much attention to them. This was great. We made him feel uncomfortable for 2 minutes. Howley got his talking points and his sound bites for his re-election bid and his fundraiser, and Garland gets to go back to business as usual. Well done.
Oh, John, your thoughts on this cross-examination of Merrick Garland and the fact that the guy looks like a fool anytime you actually talk to him?
Well, yeah, the foolish part. I mean, we've probably beaten that dead horse a lot in the past weeks here, where the question is, do they have the fools in office so that the folks who are actually pulling the strings don't have anybody calling their number because they've got folks that they can have humiliated or allowed to be humiliated, like was clearly the case there. Or is there some other sort of nefarious explanation for how it all goes down? Because obviously, I mean, look, like Fawaz said, it almost gets your goat or makes you frustrated just listening to that or watching that, because you and I both know, we all know here that nothing is ever going to happen to people like this. I mean, look, the reason why it feels like sometimes we're probably just spinning our wheels and not getting anywhere is, I remember as a kid, and I was in junior high school, let's say I was, young teen, 13 or so, somehow we were allowed to watch on television the interrogations of Clinton when he had that famous statement, "It depends on what your definition of is." I mean, if a president was able to disrespect the entire country, that way, president of the United States was able to say something like that, I mean, when are we expecting the ball to drop, or when are we expecting justice for any of these people in the government, except when they need to hang somebody out to dry, when it's really useful for whoever is actually pulling the strings, So that my only thought here is, I wonder why they wanted the news to have that piece of information. Well, maybe some of the things that someone like Project Veritas is putting out there, maybe some of that is actually so based in fact that there are things that truly do embarrass the bad actors out there. But I mean, sometimes when something like that that would come out of the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Defense, anywhere in the Justice Department, I'm just wondering, why would they let that escape? I'm thinking maybe it was somebody stupid in there that allowed it to happen, but I don't know. I think I'm more convinced that anybody that is working that high up in a place like that knows that it would mean their neck if they were to allow something like that to get off and get out, such that somebody truly would be embarrassed that shouldn't be embarrassed. So I'm just wondering if it was, running smoke for some other sort of crazy thing they've got planned for us. So, to be honest, I mean, I heard about it and thinking, well, that's curious. I know a lot of the maybe, no offense, but a lot of maybe the women's Facebook groups or Signal groups were on fire about it. But I'm just thinking, well, kind of par for the course here. No offense, ladies.
Steve, your thoughts?
I just want everybody to let know I've got my Zelensky starter kit on right now. Just the navy green.
Yeah, but it's not Under Armour.
Can't afford it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's
the whole congressional hearing thing. It's a great show. I would have had some popcorn, but unlike Anthony, we got to be fasting right now. So maybe we'll do popcorn another time. Maybe watch the video in a month or so. But yeah, like Jonathan said, it's just for show. How many people are getting all outraged about it? Oh, look at this. It's kind of like the balloon. Shoot it down, and shoot it down. And it ended up being just a distraction. Another distraction. Okay, say the feds are in. Okay, what are they going to do? So what? Okay, convert them. How about that? That's a shocker. All right, give them a miraculous medal. Talk to them. I don't know. I'm sure there are feds in churches. Probably all over. Man, I don't know. I don't go up and ask. Why is that? Are you going into mass wondering, is that a fed over there? Who's a fed? I wonder if they're going to come through. You shouldn't even care if they come through the door, shooting up a storm in there. All right, great. You're getting martyred. Again, I said that last week and people were upset about the whole. Remember I told about, if you go to confession, you're in a state of grace and just receive the sacraments and you get duped, who cares? You should be wanting that kind of in a sense. There was some pushback on that going, do we really believe, or do we want to be children, worldlings in the sense? Are we for heaven or are we for here? I mean, no one wants to be nuked, but if that's the way to go, what would you take? Being nuked or skinned alive for an hour and a half? Done or filleted? I don't know, pick one. I mean, yeah, I mean, the only option, the only real solution.
St. Lawrence.
That's right. Flip me over.
The only real solution to this, obviously, is
national divorce.
If you don't want the feds involved, divorce. If you don't want the feds to do this, divorce. If you don't like Trump, divorce. If you don't like, hey, by the way, did you see DeSantis? They had a thing down there, and he told the Trump people he told the cops to get rid of the Trump people.
Yep.
And everyone was going, oh, that's our First Amendment. No. That's the state of Florida, the governor telling you in the state of Florida, inside the state, aka country of Florida, he doesn't want you there. Now, there was an issue that violated something else, a state law about that. So he was wrong on that idea, but there's no First Amendment on there. We got to get that out of our head. Even he was bringing up the First Amendment. Yeah, they don't care about the First Amendment. James Claiborne, 15 years ago, talked about most everything we do goes in contrast to the Constitution. He don't care about that. No conservative cares about that. No liberal cares about that. Document was dead 150, 200 years ago. Stop talking about the Constitution unless you really want to go with it. The 14th Amendment, the Miracle Amendment, does not count. So, I mean, you got right now Buckhead, talk about secession. Buckhead in Atlanta, they want out of Atlanta because Atlanta's so terrible. They want to be able to run their own city. So you can even go from the big one to the small version of it. Divorce from the big city. Someone in New York City. Yeah, Anthony, out there in New York City. Get that area. Get out. The rest of New York. Dump New York City. I mean, stuff like that. You can do this. You want solutions? That's a solution. Going up and just start talking like, tag, hashtag this and that ain't going to do jack. So you got to get out there and get the ideas. Ideas grow and get people thinking about this and make movements. Like he's a secular guy. I forget his name. He's with the Last American Vagabond a lot. He's running for mayor of Houston. And no, are we all like-minded on everything? No, he's not a Catholic guy. He rejects most of the stuff probably we teach and all this. But on this level, he is 100% with us on localism and things like that. You can get behind people like that and work and pray for their conversion as well. But he's taking the action. He signed up to run for mayor of Houston. That might be my saint of the week, maybe. Because he got tired of people complaining about it. So I'm going to take it in my hands. I can do something about this. Let me sign my name. He's not an old guy. He's a young, probably about 30s. And he's doing lectures and things like that about what to do. A lot of it is what we would agree with. Now, what if Catholic guys start doing stuff like that?
Indeed. Speaking of which, it looks like it is time for our Saint of the Week and the Cry Room. Fwaz, you're up first. Saint of the Week and Cry Room.
Thank you, sir. Saint of the week, I'm going to go with Harrison Bucker. Good guy, great Catholic, I think. He tries to be, at least. He enjoys Enoch's music. Thanks be to God. And just the fact that he had a scapular on at the Super Bowl, that even though it was tucked underneath, as it should be, that's not something that should be displayed. It's with him, but the only reason I picked him as my Saint of the Week is because there was a recent article written about him and certain folks in the Catholic media who said that he's not Catholic enough, and they want him to fall on the sword and to be like a Kaepernick. I don't know about that, so I'm going to pick him as Saint of the Week. My cry room is going to be Beetlejuice. Goodbye, Beetlejuice. Goodbye. She's out of Chicago. They're going to put another puppet in there, but at least the other puppet won't be Beetlejuice.
Yep. All right. That's a good point. Yep. The crazy thing about the Chicago election is all the white people voted for the white people, all the black people voted for the black people, and all the Hispanic people voted for the Hispanic people.
That's where we're at right now. We're at, it's just a different group. What's funny what she says, the reason I lost is because I'm a black woman. Well, was that the reason you won too? I don't get it. Did you win 4 years ago because you're a black woman, or did you lose? It's just blame it on everything else except for yourself.
It's very convenient whenever it's one thing or the other.
Yeah.
So excellent. John, Saint of the Week and Cry Room.
Man, I can't believe I get the chance to get this one in there. But Bishop Thomas Paprocki of, is it Springfield? I think. In any case, with his, I think, well-worded charitable call to repentance to certain heretical cardinals in the American hierarchy. So I think he's showing us the path forward. Just lay out, here's the case, okay? And here's what we need to do, all right? Here's what should be done. Let's see, provocative. Of course, NCR would put that, the fish wrap there, the National Catholic Distorter. But it was, I don't know, go and read it on First Things. Everybody gets like 3 free articles on First Things, and it was sent to me. I checked it out, and I thought it was really well done. So I would say that's the way forward. All right. My cry room is, I don't know, because I don't like having false friends. I'm going to say Crisis Magazine and or Kennedy Hall for publishing this after the early canonization of Archbishop Lefebvre. The article, I know it was just an opinion piece, but quote unquote, the title of the article was Pope Francis's Schism, and said that if Pope Francis drops his nuclear bomb on tradition, this will create a schism in the church. And it's actually kind of Theology 101 there you go. That was it. Should be Theology 101, but maybe these folks haven't read St. Thomas's, De Articulis Fidei lately, things like that. Maybe they haven't perused some of the truly great theological material out there, and just like to throw around words like heresy, schism, and so forth, even the word faith and hope without knowing their meanings. But Francis, he can't create a schism. Even the Pope doesn't have the power to create a schism. Now, I know he's writing fast and loose, and they're wanting to get clicks there. But, not everybody, maybe, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but maybe not everybody has the patience, let's say, to wade through theological manuals or St. Thomas to try to figure out what all this stuff means. And so throwing around terms like that so loosely that are, first of all, it's wrong, it's inaccurate, it's a lie, it's not true. But to do that and to unnecessarily scandalize people and give them the sense that even the Pope could create a schism, that's actually, in my opinion, that is a sin against the faith right there, and maybe even a sin against the Holy Ghost. So, here's to the chance that Crisis might post an opposing article, one that would take another side, let's say, in my opinion, the true side. So there you go.
Excellent. Steve, what you got?
I'll go with as I brought it up, I'll go with Derek Brose for going after doing something about it. He's think locally, act locally. He's running for Houston mayor or mayor of Houston. And yeah, again, like I said, he's not behind everything we would agree with, but I would find a lot more common in him than I would with, say, a Joy Behar or whatever her name is, or things like that. So we gotta be a little bit more open for stuff like that. It goes back to what Fawaz was talking about people criticizing Harrison. I saw the clip. I actually had the guy that wrote it text me, and I challenged him on that, going, "What do you want him to do?" I mean, he's out there. He's got how many 80 some odd thousand Instagram, Twitter, and all that. He's out there putting it out there for. He's being what we want. He's putting his stuff on cleats, the pro-life day on cleats. You don't see anybody else doing stuff like that, and they want more. It goes back to no one's ever happy enough. Like where I'm at in the diocese, the diocese wants to return to tradition on every parish, and our trads here still aren't happy. So our guys that we want somebody to stand out to be a good influence on the faith on the pro level, but we got somebody like that. Still not happy. I text them back. Why don't you go after Brett Favre? I mean, if you want to put on the sports level, quarterbacks have higher profile than kickers. Brett is still out there. Make Brett. He's a Catholic guy. How many Catholic former athletes or current athletes are still out there playing that didn't say anything? Kobe never said anything about the faith.
Rivers too.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Rivers got like 14 kids.
Rivers. I mean, is he still playing? Is he done now? But I mean, he wasn't as open as in the sense of outspoken as Harrison is. No one said a thing about Philip. Half the league. Most of the league is a Catholic group. I mean, coaches, Luke Kuechly in Cincinnati, down here in Carolina, Catholic. Greg Olson, he commentated the football game. He's a Catholic guy. Goes down to, I know where the parish he goes to. There's a ton of guys that don't say a thing. So for them to go out there, I'm like nitpicking, guys. Come on, you talk about they should be perpetually in the cry room because we can't make these guys happy. But my cry room would be this:
1.4 billion citizens. Everyone over the age of 16 is required to have an official state-issued ID card that the government now wants to use to centralize all that information. And China is investing heavily in tech companies to help transform that government data into a virtually omniscient surveillance network. One of those companies is Megvii. It recently received a capital investment of nearly $500 million, part of which is from a state-run VC fund. But the name chosen for its premier piece of technology is a bit of a tell. Skynet. What is that?
The Terminator is the favorite film of our founder. So they use the same name, but they want to put something good into this.
It goes on for a couple minutes. I could not, my mouth dropped. They literally called it Skynet. Now, that's a 3-year-old video from Vice on HBO, so it's not some conspiracy theorist website like, Rick put out. It was MSNBC.com for that last one about Joe with the WHO. And how about this? Ford applies
Post. What are you talking about? That's not conspiracy theory. Get out of here.
Yeah, no, right? How about Ford? Self-repossessing cars that can drive away. Yeah, when social credit score comes in, ladies and gents, you guys we're fighting about who wears a scapular on the field and this other stuff. You're not going to be able to drive to Mass in the not-so-distant future. Forget about the feds going in your parish. You won't be able to start the car to go to Mass. You better live near your parish because you're not going to be able to get to it.
Yeah. All right. So for my saint of the week, it's going to be Texas Congressman Representative Michael Cloud, because he introduced the No Retaining Every Gun in a System That Restricts Your Rights Act, which is going after the ATF as far as keeping a gun registry out there. So you keep up the good work. It doesn't have a snowball's chance in Hades of passing, but at least the bill's introduced. Cry room, I'm going to throw myself in there for the unnecessary drama that I caused this week. And the idea, I know Anthony explained it on his show on Rumble, but I'll just at least throw my 2 cents in there. And the reason for my reaction, and I was legitimately perturbed when it took place, is because, and this is not Anthony's intention, because Anthony is a gaslighting guy who likes to, do that kind of stuff and have a good time with it. But I am tired, and this is not against Anthony, this is everybody else. I am tired of Catholics talking down to other Catholics. For me, it's bullying behavior. For me, it is something that I will, if anybody in the Catholic family, and I will go to bat for you 1,000 times if somebody's trying to talk down to you. Once again, this is not Anthony doing this. I took it that way. Maybe it was because I was hangry, possibly. But I'll throw myself in the cry room for that one because, knowing who it was coming from, and Anthony's a good dude, and Anthony and Rob, they're good guys, and I hope, I'm a bit of a curmudgeon. I'm a hard guy to deal with because I go from 0 to 100 on those kinds of things, and I have no idea how to infer text messages or text imperial. Like if you email me a joke, I'm not going to get it. I need to be able to actually see your face and all that kind of stuff. So I get to go in the cry room for that one because I made a huge deal out of something that was. But the reason I do it, is because I'm so tired. I'm so tired of Catholics putting down other Catholics or speaking from a place of, and the thing is, I know I'm going too long on this, but you guys don't know, when I was on a radio show back in the old station, for me, I had this fight with listeners. And they weren't joking around. They were legitimately questioning why this was a huge deal for the first week of Lent. People were writing me, telling me, how I was not this or that and the other thing because of it. So maybe I have a little PTSD from that, whatever. Maybe I just need to get over it, probably. So I'm in the cry room for that. And that's how that's my end of it. Anthony explained his end. I explained mine, but it's not an issue because he's a good dude. And the guys at Avoiding Babylon are fantastic. All right, that's it for this episode of News from the Pew. Please like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. We'll talk to you all next week. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.
Viva.
So the movie goes like this. The biggest drug cartels in the world get together and buy up all the media and all the politicians and force all the people in the world to stay locked in their homes, and people can only come out if they take the cartel's drugs and keep taking them over and over. I threw the script away. I mean, who is going to believe that crazy idea?